Welcome to Situational Awareness Tactics Podcast. This podcast provides the crucial art of understanding current elements in an environment to increase your safety and survival. Here's your host, forensic psychologist and consultant, Dr. Carlos.
Welcome, everybody. Well, today we have a very fascinating guest. His name is Gabriel, and he's one of the owners of Blue Green Alliance, LLC. You can find them at www.bluegreen-alliance.com. Definitely check it out, bluegreen-alliance.com. So who is Gabriel? Well, he's currently a close quarters tactics instructor and lead marksmanship instructor. He has over 1,500 hours of exclusive firearms training with a carbine and pistols. But Gabe has a unique opportunity to teach classes ranging from brand new Marines to Marines with advanced levels of marksmanship and experience. Gabe's desire to start an alliance with Joshua, the co-owner, came from the fact that he realized the Special Operations Training Group had a truly superior marksmanship program that could be taught to law enforcement personnel, increasing their proficiency and decision-making skills. And this is one of the reasons I wanted to have him on the show. We have noticed when we've had special ops on the show, they do have really a superior program. The other thing that fascinated me about Blue Green Alliance was their incorporation of neuroscience. So I can't really wait to talk to him and find out more about that and how to incorporate that. His co-owner or partner, Joshua, is a force reconnaissance team leader with 15 years of shooting experience. He's been on active duty for 10 years with the U.S. Marine Corps and has served in the reconnaissance community the entire time. So let's not waste any more show, folks, and welcome Gabriel to the show. Welcome.
Thank you for having me on.
Thank you for being here. Would you prefer Gabe or Gabriel?
Either or. I introduce myself as Gabriel, but people shorten it regularly, and it doesn't bother me either way.
All right. So, Gabriel, tell us a little bit about your program. Who's it designed for? What's it all about?
Yep. So the program that we have currently is a derivative of a program actually run by the Federal Air Marshal Academy and the firearms section. We got this from. They developed a program, and then we brought it out to the Marine Corps, and we changed it up a little bit for Marines doing carbines and pistols, which is going to provide a heuristic environment for students to learn on their own. As most people are aware, you get a shooting course, and you get online, and you're being told specifically what to do, and you go through the motions, and you hope to become better that way. And through this program, what we do is a constraints-led training is allowing the student to work within a few constraints and really grow in this heuristic environment and figure things out for themselves.
Now, when you talk about constraints, what are you referring to exactly for those listeners out there that may not be familiar?
So in the term for constraints-led training, it's going to be, I'm going to focus on 2 to 3 things. So whether you're going to call it constraints, rules, things to keep in mind, whatever it is. So for our program at the beginning of it, all we want them to do is fire the appropriate number of rounds on target that we're telling them to. We want them to use declarative statements, understanding that using a declarative statement will take something that you're trying to achieve from your short-term memory to your long-term memory faster, making it a subconscious action, and resetting your trigger on recoil. And those are the 3 things that we ask for the majority of the program, and then we just start layering individual tasks and other things inside that program while they're doing that. However, really the 3 things we ask the entire time is just that, because understanding that in the human mind for the short-term memory, we can focus on 3 to 7, 3 to 9 things, really depending on what the tasks are and the complexity of them. So if I go down with more than what you can focus on and try to process and handle, we start to see the degradation of the students because they no longer are able to keep up with what we're asking them to do.
And so what we're trying to do then is develop during that period then, so they can handle it. Is that correct?
Absolutely, yeah. Absolutely. So understanding a little bit that you want to get any skill that we do to the subconscious level. So if you think about like driving your car, all of us have been driving a car since we're 15 or 16, and we're doing 80, 85 miles an hour in a giant piece of steel, but we really don't think about it at this point. How you back out of your driveway in the morning, you might not do it the exact same way every time because you have so many repetitions, you don't have to think about it. That's what we want to do with firearms as well, because now applying that for law enforcement, for law-abiding citizens, for the military, we don't want them to think about their manipulations or utilizing those weapon systems. We want them to think about that problem at hand.
Let me ask you this. Where does the neuroscience component fit into this? I think I know where it is, but let's see.
Yeah, so that neuroscience component that we kind of just touched on a little bit is understanding how the brain processes information, and so how do we layer that information into a program that is going to benefit the student the most. So things like, the 3 to 7 for the short-term memory, understanding that the attention span before degradation is much shorter than much people do for classes, and understand that process of information, remember that long-term memory and the consolidation period has all been articulated and brought into this program. And a huge point of contact and a personal friend of ours is Dr. Justin Smith. He has an Instagram. It's called Tactical Neuroscience, and he also has a website as well, I believe, with the same. But he's been a great reference point for new ideas that we're trying to push out there to further this program all the time.
Excellent. That's really cool, because I know in your program you said you run students through specific cognitive thinking exercises that will aid in the development and refinement of their skills, motor skills, visual skills, neuro skills. Because it really does change. You got about a few seconds during that shootout, Lord forbid, and there's a lot of things happening in your mind. And the interesting, you can correct me if I'm wrong, Gabriel, but if you don't do training with some kind of stress level attached to it, if you're just simply shooting, unless you're in the basic course just learning about guns, which is fine, but if you're in law enforcement or executive protect military, if you don't have that stress component added to it, you really are losing a lot, aren't you?
So this gets into, I'm glad you asked this question, because we were talking about this a few weeks ago, and we actually have a podcast on Blue Green Alliance page about this for skill acquisition application. So during my skill acquisition phase, I want to have the least amount of stress as possible. I want to be laid back. So on the range, we'll have tents out there. They'll have their water out there, so they're not just standing in the sun the entire time with music playing in the background, because we want to make it as much of a good learning environment as possible. Once we understand that these skills have been acquired, that they're at some level of consolidation or a subconscious conscious task, at that point, then you're looking at now skill. So 100% right there, where before you go out and physically get in a gunfight or anything like this, in training you should be applied some level of stress. The common misconception, however, in the military and a lot of law enforcement training is they think that needs to be done simultaneously, that you need to be stressed out while you're doing it, and it actually gets in the way of that cognitive retention. And that's a big reason why people leaving the police academies or leaving other military courses that do this style of training have a much shorter cognitive retention because of the way that the information is provided to them.
Oh, because they put them through the highest stress environment while they're trying to teach them as well, right? Is that what you're saying?
Yep, exactly. So we separate that. We teach them. Once they understand the task and can perform, then we apply the stress to them.
What are some of the things that this is going to be the difficult part here for you, Gabriel, but I want to try to cover 2 students at once. We'll go for the first one. So people who are just starting to learn how to use guns, I know you have a basic course. I think that's for them. What are some of the things you've seen that they do wrong? And maybe you can give us a tip on how they can correct it. And then the other one, for people who are more advanced, law enforcement, special ops, whatnot, what do they do wrong? What are some of the common things you see there?
I think the biggest issue with new shooters or new gun owners is because of the proliferation of technology these days and how much stuff is on the internet. When they get interested in this, or they do get a new gun and then they go on YouTube and start getting this information, they don't know what right is and they don't know what wrong is. So they're going to take whatever they can find and run with it. So I hope that new shooters, whether they reach out to friends, family, whoever it is, and they say, hey, who is a reputable coach or trainer, or like where can I go for reputable information to learn what to do with this firearm? Because you still see, even in today in 2020, where there's a lot of firearms down in America, there's a lot of still unsafe actions and just common misconceptions in this community. And for the more experienced shooters, so for law enforcement, for military, the guys that have been shooting for 3, 5, 7 years, is the people I'm going to challenge. Honestly, I'm going to challenge them, if they haven't already, to get into competitive shooting. In the military, there is a stigma around competitive shooting that it is not realistic, and you can't apply it to combat shooting, but shooting is shooting. How you manipulate that weapon system in a different environment is going to be what separates that, I'm comparing what's right now, combat shooting versus competitive shooting. But to really push yourself out of your comfort zone and find other people to sharpen your own skills is go find your nearest IDPA or USPSA match and start competing as much as you can.
Now, I guess because it sounds like you're going to get stress level competing as well when you're shooting, right? Especially if you're competitive in nature. Does that help along with your program?
Absolutely. So the ability to go out and compete in a USPSA match, you go out there. So for those that aren't familiar, you go out, you see the stage, you get to walk the stage. So at that point, you can really plan your execution. And then, but once it's go time and that pack timer beeps, you have to be able to execute what your plan was, understanding that now you're on time, you're being scored, and other people are watching you. So I think it's a fantastic way to go find some healthy stress to see where your skills actually are.
Interesting. Yeah, I think that's one of the things people say, right? When you get into a gunfight, the two key things is accuracy and consistency. I can't remember what the other one was. Accuracy and something else.
Well, depending on who you're talking to, it's accuracy by volume. Machine gunners that are listening.
Yeah, then the game is over. Yes, indeed. Now for the more experienced shooters, what do you got going on there that you see a lot of?
I think more experienced shooters, and again, talking like that 3 to 10 year shooting range is going to be, I think they need to develop their own personal growth. So if they haven't read Practical Shooting by Brian Enos, I think that one of them should pick that book up and start reading through that as well. And the first chapter is on ego. So Brian Enos is, the grandfather of a lot of different shooting in these days. And his entire first chapter isn't about shooting. It's about ego and understanding. You need to set that aside in order to really be a good student and learn very well. Because there is sometimes in our courses, whether it's being run through Blue Green Alliance or on the Marine Corps side, that I have good shooters and I'm asking them to do something and they're incapable of it. Or a common term is I've trained myself to shoot so fast that I can't shoot as slow as you're asking me to. And I'm kind of sitting there staring at them like, do you hear yourself saying this, right? You understand that you just told me that you cannot complete an action with the firearm that you've been using for years and years and years.
Any weapons that you prefer? The Glock, anything like that? This is always, I know, subjective, but...
I mean, I think I'm always going to have a personal favorite to me, the 1911, just because in our community in the Marine Corps, we still shoot that, so that's why I grew up on shooting. But polymer weapons, handguns definitely have their carbines of all different lengths have their place as well. Understanding what the application for that weapon system is, and honestly practicing, try fire, learn how to use it. I don't think there's any one I prefer above the other, though.
This is one of the things, as you look a lot through those YouTube videos and you see all these instructors out there, there's a lot of them out there, and trying to weed it out from somebody who's a basic person who maybe never shot a gun before, obviously is very confusing. But one of the themes that I continuously see is a good grip. Is a grip.
So I think while we teach, we break down all of your fundamentals into 3 things. We just call it grips, sights, and triggers. So we want you to grip the gun 100-100. Anyone that's been shooting long enough knows that they've heard 60-40, 70-30. Yeah. There's no way to quantify that, however. I can't tell you grab a 60-40 and then ensure that you're actually doing that. So to students, no matter if it's a new student or an experienced student, I'm going to say, hey, 100-100. And that translates. I want you to grip as hard as you can. Then I want you to prep the trigger, minimize, reducing the slack, and building a proper sight picture for that weapon system, and then take that shot. Again, talking those 3 to 7 things we were talking about earlier, is take all those fundamentals and break them down to 3 things, because within those 7 or 8 fundamentals, depending on who you talk to, you can really break it down to 3. So grip, I think, is one of the 3 most important. Once you understand how to hold that pistol, and then once you understand how to manipulate your trigger, utilizing trigger reset the recoil, and what a proper sight picture is, everything else really falls into place after that.
Awesome. I know that's something you always hear. I guess the other one, too, is always the draw, how you draw your weapon. How is that? Anything you talk about that in your course?
We do. So 2 points to that. 1 point, I think it should be as uncomplicated as possible. So I need to get my gun from the holster onto target. So I'm not going to overcomplicate that with extra steps other than getting that high front pistol grip, breaking retention, have retention on my holster, and then getting my forehand all in the gun and getting that gun on target. And then secondly is going to be dry fire. And I think that ties into what we're talking about for new shooters and for the drill. If I'm looking for professional instruction and that professional instruction doesn't say that you need to dry fire using time as a metric, I would suggest any and everyone to find a different source of instruction for that. So the draw, I think should be as simple as possible. And then at that point, I think you should put it on time and you should practice and then reduce that until it's an efficient movement, getting from the holster on target as fast as possible.
Now, in the last few minutes here, again, folks, this is Blue Green Alliance. You can find them on Instagram. You definitely want to give them a follow there. You can also follow them at their website, bluegreen-alliance.com. Gabriel, in regards to CQB, close quarter battle stuff, you train that. Do you train that civilians? I'm always looking for good courses to send my listeners to that can help them if they get in at home and maybe they think somebody has broken into their home. Any kind of civilian training for CQB, or is it strictly for law enforcement and military?
So this time, it's going to be strictly for law enforcement and military. Due to being an active duty military member, I am not technically able to do that. However, attending courses through BGA, there is costs and things and scenarios that will be able to be set up that can be discussed. There won't be formal instruction for CQB, but if you understand the context and apply it, once you do go back into a four-wall structure, then I think it will highly increase your capabilities from what we do on the range and how we run our courses to what you're going to do inside of a room utilizing angles.
Let me ask you this, if we could. In regards to CQB, what about the movies? Is there anything in the movies that stand out to you? You say, oh, come on, you can't be serious. You're showing that. It's a bunch of baloney. You guys would be killed in minutes. Anything that stands out for you? I know you have to have one.
Oh, man, I think there's a lot, and I want to do my best to, like, if I'm sitting down to watch a movie, I just want to enjoy it, so I'm not trying to, overly focus on things. That show with, SEALs or Navy SEALs with the guy that was from Bones, and I think we watched
Justin
one.
Melnick?
I think so, yeah. We watched one clip of that show, and they were going aside, and it was dark, and they were wearing, like, dark eye pro. And I was like, man, that's got to be really, really hard to see right now. Just little things like that. I think there's a lot of tactics. There's a lot of ways to do things. I think that if someone is looking for training or they're looking to develop their own SOPs and TTPs, as long as it's tactically sound, it's repeatable, it's safe for themselves and the other members of their team, I think if that rule of three right there is going to serve anyone well in whatever they're attempting to do or attempting to create.
That's a good point. Good point. Yeah, we had the fortunate luck to interview Justin. It was last year. It was a great, fun interview. Yeah, one of the things we try to do is try to make sure we dispel some of the myths or misconceptions that are out there, and that's definitely one it's been a hard fight. A lot out there.
There is a lot out there, and a lot of movies portray guns that shoot a lot more rounds than they actually have bullets for. That's always a fun one too.
Yeah, that one, and what was the other one we talked about yesterday where somebody gets hit and the movie's, it goes down. That doesn't always happen.
Yeah, I think a good example, as I know the John Wick movies with Keanu Reeves, he was very, very good about getting training from people like Terran Tactical and some other individuals, and was very good about keeping his weapon systems to accurate engagements. He would run dry at an appropriate amount of rounds fired. I know that was a big thing for all of his movies, so this probably goes for a more realistic take on how to manipulate, weapon systems and what their capabilities are. I'm going to lean towards John Wick. It is still Hollywood. It is still a Hollywood production film, but I know the actor himself wanted to keep it as realistic and got the training to do that.
The funny thing is, I know some people are saying, oh, why do you do that? Well, the reason I do it is because it has consequences. As silly as it may sound, folks, It has consequences because if you have enough people that watch, and I even go back as far back as Dirty Harry, they really view the public's perception of things. If your perception or your understanding of gun fights or shooting is based on these movies, and you have enough people, they'll start pushing legislation based on these misconceptions. And it scares me. Because then you have a lot of people who are not knowing what's going on. I'm sorry, what were you going to say?
I agree. I think the ignorance of the American public in some things allows for the legislature to go forward, and then you have people talking about assault rifles and battle rifles and all of these other terms that the common American thinks is a real thing, and they think it's bad and scary. And I think as a community, we need to do a better job of dispelling those myths and just taking people like that out to the gun range. There isn't very many people that I know that when you finally get them out to a gun range and you have them start shooting, they just don't have a lot of fun with it.
Yeah, and to try to get them to hit that hand, right? Hit the gun out of the other person's hand. What's the other one you always hear?
Set that one up for them.
Yeah, that's the one I'd love to see. And, of course, the automatic weapons. Those are illegal, right? We have to ban those. We have to ban the automatic weapons. Anyway, that's a story for another day. Thank you again so much, Gabriel. Truly appreciate your time.
Yep, no worries. Thank you for having me on the show.
And where else can we get more information about you and what you guys are up to?
So you start at the beginning. If you head to our website, www.bluegreen-alliance.com, we have all of our information for our courses there. We have our upcoming courses, past courses, and you can reach out to us as well. Plus, links for all of our podcasts that we have currently and blogs about different things.
Awesome. Again, folks, Blue-Green-Alliance. You can also find them on Instagram to get more information and follow up to see what they're doing. Thanks again, everyone, for listening. Stay safe out there.